Welcome to A Growing Concern. A few weeks ago we had a couple fellows on that were mad as hell. They were doctors. They were mad as hell doctors, and they went on a tour back to D.C. through 22 cities, and they talked a lot about how important it is that we do the single payer or the public option, or do some real reform. And I hope I didn't get that wrong, but we're going to talk a little bit with two of the folks that they were on the show last time, and they're also on the show this time. We have Michael Huntington and Paul Hochfeld. Welcome to the program again.
Thank you.
And before we get into the tour, which I want to talk mostly about the tour, what was Mad as Hell Doctors about, and why did you decide to go on this this odyssey that was back to D.C.?
I think it's fair to say we were pretty disgusted by the debate that wasn't going on inside Washington. And they had single payer wasn't even on the table. We were starting from compromise and compromising from there. And we got approached by Gary Jelinek and Adam Klugman about whether we wanted to go to Washington and give presentations along the way, and we said sure, and we settled on a name, Mad as Hell Doctors. And it turns out what I'm mad about isn't healthcare. What I'm mad about is that our legislators have partnered with the industry to create public policy that's more about profits than public good.
Yeah, and for what you said before, you've mentioned that the way things are going, that this reform is going to be deformed, so to speak. It's going to continue being just the way it was, with the insurance companies having more power.
Yeah, it amounts to a mandate for all of us to buy a defective product. And to quote one of our PNHP leaders, a Ford Pinto in every garage is what we're being asked to buy.
And what does that means? Just that it's going to be a step backwards from what we have now, then?
It's going to...
Or a sidestep.
It's going to require that more of us buy private health insurance. And in a way, it's a bailout of the private health insurance industry, which we think is dying. I think they know that they're dying, and they've asked the taxpayers to bail them out, again, by this mandate.
Interesting. So do you think this is possibly been orchestrated from the beginning by them?
Oh, I think so. Yes, I
hate to be cynical, but I tend to always think that, if it smells like a duck and walks like a duck,
Yeah, the truth is there are some good things that they're going to try to do with this legislation, and it's really a moving target. We don't know what it is yet because it hasn't been fully lobbied. But the problem is that we have a healthcare system, we have a healthcare non-system that costs too much. And the way they're going to fix the system is they're going to mandate that everybody in the country that doesn't have insurance buy a commercial product, insurance. And if you can't afford it, you pay slightly more than you can afford, and the taxpayer pays the difference. And we still won't have a system. To the extent that we have a system, it'll be designed to serve the insurance industry. And without a system, we can't really, as a society, decide how we're going to prioritize our spending, since most of it is taxpayer money anyway, to produce the most health for our healthcare dollars. And they're not talking about healthcare reform from this perspective of access to basic essential health care is a human right. As such, it's a legitimate function of government. And if it's a legitimate function of government to use taxpayer money for health care, which is what you have to do if it's a human right, then how does the government get the most health out of our health care dollars? And there's just nobody in the non-system we have right now that asks that question.
So are the other nations, I don't know, maybe Mike can speak to this, are other nations, are they coming at it from that perspective, that health care is a right? Or does that just happen to be they thought that was a better way to do it?
I think that's the basic difference, is that those countries have determined that there is solidarity amongst their people and that everyone does better when everyone does better. And so you could call it, they say healthcare is a right. Some people don't like that phrase. Some people would say the government and society has an obligation to offer essential healthcare benefits to everybody, and then everybody does better. We have not reached that agreement yet in this country, and I think we should.
The paradox is that when you start the discussion with access to basic essential health care as a human right, and it becomes a legitimate function of government, there's evidence all around the world that you end up getting better results at less cost.
Even in this country. The Veterans Administration is a good example of one.
Right. And the Veterans Administration, I understand recently, I heard on the radio, that they are allowed to jostle with the pharmaceutical companies about the price of the drugs, whereas the Medicare can't.
No.
Is that right?
That was cleverly written into the legislation in 2003 that Medicare would not be allowed to negotiate price on pharmaceuticals, whereas the Veterans Administration and Medicaid can.
That doesn't make sense. You know, I know that, you know, in France and England and all these other places that have a lot better healthcare system, their corporations are, maybe they're not as powerful as here, but they're very powerful. How is it that we have corporations in this country that, whether we're talking about pharmaceutical companies or insurance companies or big coal or your energy companies, they, you know, write their own ticket? What's different here?
Well, this is not about health care. This is about campaign finance reform. This is about our corporatocracy. And in this country, it takes a lot of money to win elections. We don't have elections. We have auctions.
I've heard that said that before.
And
That's exactly right.
we picked up a lot of really cute phrases on the road. All our legislators care about is getting reelected, because it has to be, I can imagine, being a senator or a congressman, all you want to do is get reelected because, God, it's a great job. You get great benefits. Everybody treats you like you're a celebrity. Your family gets to make a lot of money in the long run. I guess you get health care for life. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, you know, we've talked in this program about this before and in other contexts, but it seems to me if once you get elected, and even as you're getting elected, you're putting your own election as more important than the duties of your office and the rights of the American people, isn't that kind of treason?
I would call it self-serving.
Self-serving, yes, self-serving. But it just seems to me that if you put something, you know, above the good of the nation, your actions, you know, maybe border on treason anyway. That might be a little too far for you fellas to go. I don't know, but it just seems to me that it should be at least criminal.
They're functioning under the system that we've established, and so and it's the same in the healthcare system. We've established a system that rewards profit in doing procedures. In our political life, we've established a system that rewards spending a lot of time raising money for re-election.
You know, I was thinking a little while ago while you were talking that it just seems to me that a lot of this is revolving around the fact that medical care is so expensive. Now, you're a
Radiation oncologist.
And you work in the emergency room. Does it really cost those folks that much money to do what they do?
They've created monsters. Our hospitals have bought into technology and bought into specialty care because those are the profitable things. And a lot of people just can't pay their bills. And in order for hospitals to stay solvent, they have to raise their prices for the things that they expect to get paid for. So they get paid a lot of money for the procedures. They don't get paid much money to just take care of people. And there's an awful lot of cost shifting that goes on, and the price is reflected. I mean, an MRI in Japan costs
$89 or so.
$90.
Oh my, it's what, $1,500 here? Is that right?
At least, yeah.
So that's what, 1,800 times as much money, 18,000% difference?
They do a lot more MRIs and CTs in Japan. That the public has come to expect that, and yet they can do it because the Minister of Health has assigned a reasonable price for those studies. And you would think that would suppress innovation and industry, but in Japan the industry responded by producing a MRI machine that was a lot cheaper. And then they were able to market that machine all around the world. So in a way it stimulated free enterprise.
The old making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's the inventiveness of this country. It just seems to me that the corporations are always whining that, you know, the sky's going to fall rather than take it as a challenge. You know, that's a good example of what could have happened here as well, it would seem to me. Well, it's great that you're able to go across the country and talk to folks. So what were some of your experiences along the way? I know you had 22 stops that were already all set up ahead of time at town halls and such.
22 cities.
Cities, right.
We had 22
26,
days, 25 cities, and we did multiple presentations, multiple days. And we didn't always do talking. We did a lot of listening. And part of our presentation routinely was to have people have an opportunity to participate with the Mad as Hell Minute, where people in the audience got in front of a camera that was projected on a screen to tell their neighbors why they're mad as hell. And we just heard some horrendous stories about people's experiences with our healthcare system. I guess the worst for me, or the most poignant for me, was the gentleman who said he just was let go from his job because his employer had to let him go because his wife just got MS, was diagnosed with MS. And his wife having MS would increase his employer's insurance rates for the other employees so much that he had to let this guy go. Only in America. So this guy is guilty only of having a wife that's unfortunate enough to have MS, and he will eventually lose everything because they're now uninsurable, and eventually he's going to have health care costs and he's just going to lose everything. That only happens in America, among the developed countries.
There were some unexpected stories in Bloomington. Woman in her mid-50s said, I want grandchildren. I want to be a grandma. And she said, my children are afraid to have babies because they don't have health insurance.
Because I remember, you know, in 1967, you know, the daughter I had, I think it was like $600 or something like that for the whole thing. And what does it cost to have a child with no complications now?
I'd have to guess. But speaking of complications, that's of course a big worry. If a child is preemie, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, I have my sister's daughter had a preemie a 3 months, and it's up into the millions now.
Wow.
In Sacramento.
And yet we're not able or willing to supply the prenatal care that would prevent those emergencies. That's the one of the many insane parts about our healthcare non-system.
I know you talked about that last time you were here. It was since people can't go to the doctor, they don't have the money to go, they don't find out about things soon enough, and they're not able to head off some of the problems, and so it just gets worse and worse. And so by the time they end up realizing what they have, it's either incurable or it's so far along, and then it gets really expensive. And according to what you were saying before, that if people could get to the doctor, a lot of these problems people have, they wouldn't even have. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. While we were on the road, the latest Harvard study came out that showed that 45,000 people die every year because of difficulties with accessing health care. That's up from 22,000 the last time that it happened. So these are 45,000 avoidable deaths that happen because people have real or perceived financial barriers to getting the care that they need when they need it. Now, built into that is probably some excess costs, because a lot of these people probably ended up utilizing a lot of health care before they died because they got really sick, and we all paid for it anyway. That's the irony, is we're all paying for everybody anyway. We're just pretending we aren't. So that there's a lot of, that 45,000 is just the ones that are dying. What about all the ones that are just suffering? Because of it?
I think it was Keith Olbermann or the program that comes on after him that was speaking, that talking about one of the points that the Republicans are saying that are, you know, this is going to be a burden on the taxpayer. But according to what he was saying was the taxpayer isn't going to pay for this. The people that pay into the insurance are paying for this, except for what? From what you were saying, a few that can't afford it. So this isn't going to be a big burden on the taxpayer. And you hear a lot about this on the corporate news stations. I'm kind of confused about it. Is this going to be a really big burden? Say a single payer or a public option goes through. Is this really going to be as bad as the Republicans and the conservatives are trying to say?
Well, there's going to be some initial costs like priming the pump. For example, how to take care of all the people working for insurance companies, health insurance companies now. They will need unemployment compensation. They will need retraining, and that will be costly. We're going to have to slowly get out of our habits of having too many MRIs, too many CT scans. So we're going to have to push some money into the system so that we can get to a point where it's a single payer system that is half as costly as what we're doing now.
I see. I understand that. Yeah.
If you look at what's happening right now in sort of broad strokes, what you've got is you've got the government, the taxpayer, taking on all the old people, Medicare. So the taxpayer is paying for all the old people, right?
Right.
You've got the taxpayer taking care of all the Medicaid people, all right? You've got the insurance companies taking care of the employed people, and employed people are statistically healthier than unemployed people. And the insurance companies taking care of all the rich people that can afford their premiums, and wealthy people are healthy people for lots of reasons other than access to a doctor.
Right.
And most of these insurance premiums that are through employers are tax deductible for the employer. So the insurance companies are getting subsidized to take care of the health care of the healthy and wealthy people who are healthy, and the taxpayers taking care of all the other people all by themselves. The taxpayers getting screwed.
And they're also taking care of the veterans too, right?
Yeah.
And that's some really high costs when you amputees and such.
So it's, I don't understand, and if you were to allow the taxpayer to just take care of everybody and not have the insurance companies creating all these perverse incentives in the system and getting in the way of actually having a system, the taxpayer would end up spending less money. Because all those insurance premiums would get rolled into taxes, same money, but you just call it taxes instead of premiums.
After upfront money, like Mike was saying, you know, to get things going.
And that's why when you start the discussion with access to basic essential health care as a human right and a legitimate function of government, and the taxpayer takes that on, then the taxpayer insists on getting value. What if the government came to us 3 years in a row with a 10% increase in our health tax? Think they'd get away with that?
No, but that's what's been happening with the insurance companies.
But we just roll over because they're insurance. If the government came to us with that, we would say, no, that's just not acceptable. You're going to have to figure out how to provide health care for less. And actually, some of this discussion about rationing would then come up, because the government might actually say, well, you know, that means we can't do heart transplants and liver transplants. And the taxpayer would go, what are we going to do? And the government would say, well, if you want to spend more money, we can do this, but without it, there's just certain things we can't offer. Right now, we're rationing health care by economic status, by insurance status. The insurance companies are rationing health care.
Pre-existing conditions.
Having a single payer would make a public discussion of this just like they do in every other developed country.
You know, it seems to me that you folks, being doctors, you have a really good handle on this. And I wonder, a couple of questions. Going across the country, did it seem like folks were somewhat informed? And why aren't some of these subterranean details being talked about in D.C.? Obviously, it's because insurance companies don't want them to be talked about. They're being deliberately, what's the word, obfuscated?
Yes. Many of the people that came to our rallies, 100 to 300 people at each of them, were aware. And it was a sort of a selected audience, because we contacted volunteers in these towns, and they called in people that they knew were interested in it. But the media coverage really was limited, and we're kind of thinking that people who sit on boards of the national media also sit on boards of national insurance companies, and they just would rather not talk about these things.
That makes sense, because there's they call it interlocutory directorates or whatever like that when they're sitting on the board of directors for petroleum companies and insurance companies, and
I think
that sounds criminal.
I think Senator Dodd's wife makes $2 million a year by sitting on the boards of directors of a few corporations. I believe.
I just heard about a governor they were talking about yesterday that was the situation where his wife was doing the same thing. Well, we've had an opportunity to discuss this a little bit. I'd like to talk more about the trip, but you've got a 20-minute video, right?
Yeah.
And we're into the program about 20 minutes, and we'll listen to this 20-minute video, 21 minute. Then we can come back and discuss this a little bit more, and maybe open up the phones, because to me this was an exciting thing, and a very, very admirable thing you folks did. It took a month, and then since then you've had some spots on national TV programs to talk about all this, and so it's still very much part of your life, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead there and play that video, a 21-minute video, and then we'll come back when that's over.
For every ill there is a pill, for which we're overcharged.
Right now I'm standing in Pioneer Courthouse Square in downtown Portland, Oregon. And this is our kickoff day. We're leaving on this beautiful sunny day, and we're on our way across the country. We've put together a string of 5 vehicles and a total of almost 20 people who are going cross country on behalf of the movement of single payer. We're going to be visiting a total of 26 cities on our way. We have organizers in each of those cities, and as I said earlier, we expect to see thousands of people on our trip. We want to be the catalyst to the movement called single payer.
How y'all feeling today? Me too. Do we know what we're mad about? It's a nation of us out there that know that this is right and that this is the right thing to do. And this is as much about justice as it is about healthcare. It's as much about democracy as it is about healthcare. And it's as much about reclaiming our political process as it is about healthcare.
Where we are is at the very, very beginning of this whole process. There's just been about 4 months worth of work that's been done in 6 weeks. All of us, each one of us, operating independently, hoping that we're all working from the same page. And here we are. This is the launch today. Feels like there's some story here that wants to emerge beyond healthcare, beyond single payer even, that it wants to become about a kind of populism where we can reclaim our government, we can reclaim political power by pushing from the bottom up. And what's going to make the difference, whether from this point forward, from this beginning forward, whether or not that story is inspiring enough to capture the imagination of the American people and to mobilize its will. And for me, that's what this is all about.
Dr. Tiller had a family, 3 daughters and a son.
Peel off the layers of this whole healthcare debate, the crisis, and you get past the lobbyists and the insurance industries and the politicians, and you get down to the doctors, and it's really important to listen to them, and I think we can trust our doctors in this more than anybody else.
This is about healthcare, but it's not about healthcare. This is about our broken political process, and this is about the industry manipulating public policy for profits.
I'm mad as hell because the United States is the only industrialized nation in which poor people die because they cannot afford medical care. This is the only country in which even those of us with insurance can see our families go bankrupt if we have the wrong disease. Our money is going to insurance companies. Single payer is simply bookkeeping. It's getting money from my patient to me without an insurance company taking a 30% cut.
And I'm mad as hell because I've seen people suffer unnecessarily because we do not have a system. Between 1996 and 2006, I saw the cost of treating certain types of cancer triple, and the reason is that we don't have a system that decides, is this really important technology that we're developing, or is it just a way to bring income into the hospital?
What is the procedure? The procedure is to take all of the money that we currently spend in all of the healthcare systems of the world, of the United States rather, and put it into a single source that can be used to pay for the healthcare needs of everybody. That's the procedure.
But this morning I went to the playground and bullies were guarding the swings. They knocked over the slide, dumped out the sandbox, took away all of our things. This playground is run by bullies and they're all so big and mean. But this playground was made for all of us and we're gonna change this scene. Well, all of us were scared of the bullies. They were so big and we were so small.
The ultimate measure of a physician is not where they stand in time of comforts and conveniences, but where they stand in time of challenges and controversies. And these doctors who are going across the nation, from Oregon, Corvallis, to Washington, D.C., I believe that they can make a difference. So my blessing is this, is that the God of heaven will protect them on the road, and that the God of heaven will let their voices be heard with compassion and humanity. My prayer.
I'm Jason Bloomberg. I'm a family physician from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm mad as hell that the insurance companies and our government giving welfare to corporate capitalism puts me in conflict with my religious values. My holy writings say, "Stand not idly by thy brother's blood." Nowhere does it mention anyone's ability to meet a copay or deductible. I've opened up a clinic for people who are uninsured, and I have people come who've lost their insurance because loss of job, change of location, all of a sudden a pre-existing condition that wasn't there 10 years earlier. The time for change is now.
It is unacceptable that in the United States of America, where we do care for each other, where we do send our kids to school, where we do ensure our safety, where we protect ourselves from external threats that may or may not be real, we cannot accept this anymore. So please, all of you, get mad as hell. Talk to your doctors, talk to your representatives, write letters, give money. Take the time to really, really show that you care, because this is a tragedy that's happening now and we're not fixing it.
And the insurance companies made that really impossible. They kept throwing more hoops for us to jump through, and we kept trying to jump through those hoops. But eventually you come to a point where you say, it's time to do something about it. So I'm mad about the fact that they've taken over our healthcare system, and it's affecting the lives of my patients and my family and my friends. And I know that in this nation, we have enough money to take care of everybody. We have doctors and hospitals that are excellent. We have everything that we need except the political will to do what is right. And that's why we're here, right? Thanks.
Hey, how's it going? We're here in Denver, Colorado. It is just amazing. Scenic. Winnie looks beautiful, more beautiful than ever. She keeps getting prettier and prettier every day. We're putting her in these great locations with awesome communities. We've had Margaret Flowers on board for a couple days. It's been amazing. Picked up a couple more of our docs today. We're like getting into full starting lineup, getting our groove on and getting the flow going. keep on keeping on for single payer, because that's what this is all about. Woo!
My hospital, after I'd worked there for 9.5 years, they're doing their best to serve the whole population, but they kept pushing us to produce more and more, and finally they said, you have a quota of patients, and they said that the quota came because we were a rural hospital and that Congress had set the quota. And I said, well, then I want to talk to Congress. They can't set a quota of people I have to see per day. I want to provide good health care. I'm not going to see people for one thing only. I'm not going to see a quota. I want to give good health care, and I fought. My hospital district said, we're done with you. They gave me a 3-month severance check and asked for my ID and keys and said leave. I want to talk to Congress. I want to give good health care. I want to give it to anyone who walks in the door. I'm mad as hell.
Let's go back to slavery. It was an obscenity. It was not seen as an obscenity at the time by all, but those who cared, those who had compassion, those who had understanding of how other people live, those people saw it was an obscenity, and they demanded that it be changed. And they gathered together, as you've gathered together here today, on the steps of their capitals across this nation, and they demanded an end be brought to this obscenity of slavery. And who did they use? They used their government. The government was the instrument by which it was changed. And to land man on the moon, did we do it with an insurance cooperative? Did we do it with private industry? No, we turned to our government, and our government got it done. Government works when the people make it work. You, we are the government.
We all know somebody who can't get the care they need. Too many people are suffering from your corporate greed. Now
healthcare is a constitutional right. It is not a privilege. To provide for the general welfare is in the Constitution. Do you know the definition of welfare? Take a look. Number 1 definition is health. Health is what welfare is all about. I hope we do not get conflated with driving and health care. You have to have insurance for driving. Driving is a privilege. Health care is a right.
Stories must be told how lives were sold, 'cause you can't run and hide from this rising tide.
The only thing that's going to get a single payer is when this campaign becomes a movement. We need a social movement. This is our anti-war. This is our civil rights. Our generation needs to stand up, because behind all of this policy and behind all of these agreements and disagreements is real human suffering. 47 million people are uninsured, and more of them go to bed every night terrified that if something happens, they won't be insured. So this is about human suffering. This is about a movement.
I'm mad as hell because I pay $1,206 a month for my medical insurance. I am uninsurable because of breast cancer. Was on a COBRA, ran out of the COBRA, had to go on to the state high-risk program. It went from $900 to $1,206 in January. If it goes up again, we're going to be in a bit of trouble.
No, you can't run and hide from this rising tide.
What do we want? Healthcare! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Healthcare! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Healthcare! When do we want it? Now!
I'm mad as hell because healthcare should be a human right. It shouldn't be a privilege. I've worked 25 years in a company, and I should not have to risk one of my kids or me getting sick and go bankrupt when health care should be a human right and not a privilege.
Folks, this is a war. We are in a war. We're in a war to restore America's integrity and soul. Our fellow Americans are suffering and dying needlessly. That's why I'm mad as hell.
We can pay for the lottery every day, but we can't pay for health care. 195 million to 1 is the chance of winning the lottery, but we spend money every day in the lottery, but we won't want to pay for health care.
If it'll be more profitable for us to save money with any form of government plan, why are we even concerned about an insurance broker's money? Why in the hell am I having to choose between something better for me and my family or the livelihood of somebody who makes 18 times, 20 times more than me? That's my question.
These folks are willing to spend more money to get less. If, as I think all of you here believe, health care is a human right, a civil right, a right defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a right defined in our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, when we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, how can anyone pursue life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness without health? It's impossible.
I'm mad as hell because we have politicians that are supposed to represent us that are practicing un-American activities. One of the premises of this United States is the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you can't do any of that without health.
What I'm mad as hell is that people don't understand that this is a national security issue. Every year, 45,000 people die prematurely because they don't have health care. That's 15 9/11 attacks a year, more than one 9/11 attack every month.
I'd like to welcome the doctors of Detroit. I believe in their cause, and I'm here for them. We've got to have this universal health care.
So that we the people can stay well and healthy every day, every way.
I'm here because I'm in support of single payer. And I need to know some mad doctors and some mad nurses and some mad patients, because I'm mad. I'm here to support these doctors who come into town about this universal health care. It's something we desperately need.
I worked for 30 years for GM, and look like they're trying to do away with our insurance.
I don't think the Taliban is really the main enemy. I think we're enemies to one another because we fight one another. So let's get it together. God bless you.
We're here in Lafayette Park, and the Mad as Hell doctors are arriving and rallying. All of this is the setup that's just been sniffed by the dogs to make sure that we're not doing anything dangerous. And I think the most dangerous thing we're doing is we're actually standing up and advocating for single-payer national health care.
We're going to celebrate the beginning of the civil rights movement that surrounds healthcare reform and the beginning of our country beginning to really understand that healthcare is a right and that we're all paying for everybody anyway, so we ought to design a system that reflects it. Peace out.
Again, single payer health care today. Woo! Health care for all! Health care for all! Health care for all! Single payer! What do we want? Single payer! When do we want it? Now!
When I was in Chicago, a reporter asked me, he said, what's the biggest obstacle to getting health care reform? And I thought, and I said, ignorance. Ignorance. Because when the American people find out, the media is holding out on them, that there are systems all over the world that work, that have fixed this problem for half the cost, they have the cure, and they're all publicly controlled, single-payer systems that work and are affordable, the people are going to be mad as hell too.
More of our fellow Americans are suffering and dying every day. President Obama doesn't get the job done.
After leaving practice for a few years to be a mom, I haven't gone back into practice because I've been so discouraged to see how impossible it is to practice the kind of primary care medicine that I trained to do and believe in. So what I do now is I call myself a healthcare advocate, and I try to do the things that don't get reimbursed but are necessary parts of primary care, like counseling people, talking to them about end-of-life issues, helping them make decisions, and facilitating communication between physicians. And I can tell you that from my vantage point now, the things that I see as a result of this broken healthcare system are abominable. Fragmented care, things getting lost between the cracks, physicians who don't have time to establish relationships with patients, and it takes all the joy and satisfaction out of practicing medicine. You may think that as patients you don't like this, but physicians hate it as much or more than you do.
This system is absolutely insane. It's gone completely to hell, and it does not do anything like what it's supposed to do.
The language of insurance companies is immoral and amoral. Pharmaceutical companies, the same. But they do what they do as the result of a system which rewards them handsomely and yet ignores the suffering of tens of millions of Americans who are uninsured and tens of millions more Americans who are underinsured. And if there be a cause that is worthy of the work of the rest of our lives, it is to make sure that each and every American is able to participate in a universal, single-payer, not-for-profit healthcare system where everyone is covered, where no one is turned away, where no one is afraid to be sick, where wellness becomes a principle, where every individual's health is encouraged, where we encourage people to take responsibility for their own health because the system will not exploit them when they don't have health. So our commitment is not just for today. It is not just for a week or a month or even a year. Our commitment is for a lifetime so that others may have a lifetime of productive human existence. That is our commitment. And there cannot be a more meaningful reason for our own existence to realize that what underlies all of our efforts here is a fundamental belief in the sanctity of the principle of human unity, and that is that we are all one, that we are all interconnected, that we are interdependent, that what affects any one of us affects all of us, and that we are, in fact, not only our brother and sister's keeper in a profound sense, we are our brother and sister because we are all one. And so, acting upon that oneness, we understand that time, even political time, is an illusion, that in fact our commitments are forever, and when our commitments are forever, no matter how long that road is that we have to go down, no matter how high the barrier is that we have to surmount, no matter how intransigent political systems may seem, we will overcome those barriers. We will go down that road. We will find the day when everyone in this country has health care for all, that we will have the system we seek to create, and that we will be the ones of whom it will be said years later, they led the path to social justice, they led the path to health care for all, they led the path to a better country and to a better world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody in, nobody out. 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 Everybody in.
Can open up the phone, see if folks want to call up and any comments or questions here. It's really fortunate that we have, you know, community media and public access where we can bring these things to you. My question along the way is, were you able to get onto any the corporate media along the way?
We had limited success. We actually found,
but you did have some.
We had a fair amount of spotty local media attention, local television. At our rally in D.C., we had more international media than we had any, national media in this country. And I think they find it very entertaining to watch us struggle with something that they've dealt with. And I think they find it entertaining to find us bad-mouthing Canada and bad-mouthing France and telling people about how there's so much suffering and so many lines, and they wouldn't change what they've got for what we've got in a million years. It's just, they've got it together, and they've just, we're a society that's getting older but not growing up, and there are societies that are growing up and figuring out how to have these difficult public discussions.
Well, I know they're ahead of us, not just with healthcare, but with global warming and a lot of other things. When they're actually trying to do, whether or not they succeed, I don't know, but they're dealing with the issues. And that's the old people before profits, profits before people. With that simple phrase, it just shows you, where the where it's all angled towards. If it's angled towards profit, we're going to end up with what we have. And we've got the phone number up there, so hopefully folks.
It's really interesting that in the European countries where the taxpayer's footing the health care bill and industry doesn't have as much of a stranglehold on government, they're capable of passing stronger environmental laws. Environmental laws that'll keep people healthier so the taxpayer doesn't have to spend as much money on health. And it really starts to change the way you see government.
Everything's interconnected, and that really demonstrates that. I think we have a call. We'll get the first caller. First one's usually kind of bumpy, so we'll get the first caller on the air. Hello, caller.
Hi, just comment and a question.
Sure.
Just taking off tomorrow to Canada to go hunt and do it every year. Have several friends up there. I don't know of anybody that likes the system. A good example is mother-in-law in Alaska breaks her wrist at the airport, slips and falls on the ice. She can't be treated in Alaska. She has to fly home. Her insurance won't cover her outside of the country. Another complaint they have is they have no Canadian doctors. The doctors all come down to the States because of the system.
I disagree with both of those.
Just a comment.
So that has been your experience, you're saying?
Yes.
All right.
Over 10 years. Okay. I have a good friend up there. He has never been able to communicate with the doctor that delivered his baby because he's from Africa. He lives in a town of about 10,000 people. He can't communicate with them, with the language. Okay. Just a comment. Who in their right mind thinks that Washington can straighten this problem out?
All right, well, we'll address that question here.
I mean, what have they run? Today they announced that they had 24 people in Congress that are under ethics investigation for peddling influence.
You can't get any argument from us there. All right.
Okay.
All right,
thanks,
we'll address that. We have other callers backing up here. You do hear, thank you. You do hear a lot about Canada is bad, but I don't hear that from any people in Canada.
Well, I would like to offer a more recent national study from Canada that says that 86% of the Canadians are very much in favor of the system they have. This is a variable from province to province, and it may be that in this gentleman's family area that they are understaffed with doctors. There is not a giant rush of doctors out of Canada into the United States. That did happen for a while in the 90s. It's actually the other direction now because doctors like to practice where they know their patients are not being abused by the system. And as far as what we do in this country, I guess we can't trust Congress and their lobbyists to do the right thing for us, but we have a very good system that's managed by the government. It's called the Veterans Administration Hospital that has very good results. They take care of their patients well. They do better in the veterans system than any other system in the United States. There are many other examples of where government is the only way to get things done. It takes a lot of involvement with the people, though. We have to be government in order for things to work well.
Mm-hmm. I think we have another call. We'll just move along and try to get at least a couple more callers up. Next caller.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, yeah, I want to thank the doctors for going across country. It's really inspiring. I was down there at Pioneer Square to see them off, and I'm glad to see they got a lot of people following them across country. And I just want to ask them and suggest what we can do now that Congress is putting through this bill. What do they think is going to happen next? If you can let people know of different websites like your website where they can go to get more information. I've been calling the White House. I've been calling Nancy Pelosi and people like that and just leaving messages to tell them that I want single payer and I want them to just push it more towards single payer, whatever we can do now, what they think we can do to get it right in this country after all these years.
All right, well, thank you.
Thanks.
It's not clear what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that what they're going to do isn't going to fix the problem. So that, as Dennis Kucinich says, this is not something that's going to get fixed today, not by this Congress. So we really have to just keep working at it. We need to keep telling the truth. And it's going to continue to implode. People are going to continue to suffer, and we just need to keep the pressure on. And I think we need as a country to commit ourselves to access to basic essential health care is a human right.
Mm-hmm.
And that single payer is a mechanism by which we can accomplish this. But the goal is basic access to health care for everybody in a way that doesn't break the bank. And we just need to make it a legitimate function of government. And we have 40, 50 years of experience now proving to us that what we're doing isn't working. We have to get over our arrogance and learn from the other parts of the developed world. Every other developed country in the world has figured this out. And we keep on looking for this uniquely American solution. And I would say what we've got is a uniquely un-American solution. If being an American means caring about your community, we have a uniquely un-American solution.
Mm-hmm. I think we have another caller. That was very well put. They might have hung up, they might not have. We'll put them back up here. They did? Okay. Yeah, what you were saying, it's just, at the bottom line, everything you folks have been saying tonight is the bottom line, because it isn't a health care problem. It's a legislation problem, I guess. You're saying with the campaign finance reform is really the only way to really handle this. And but meanwhile, it took a lot of years for this system to get where it is. It's not going to get fixed, in one session. I guess they call back. We'll get the next caller. Next caller, you're on the air. We're running out of time here, so.
Hi, I just wanted to talk to the doctor.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I was watching your program, and I can relate because I've been advised I have Crohn's and chronic pain, and I have insurance, and the ER doctors in the state of Oregon have told me multiple times to go to a pain management clinic, and yet my insurance won't pay for it, and they don't have any excuses for it. And so it's just, the whole system is screwed up.
The whole system is screwed up.
I agree.
It sounds like a poster.
What's really interesting...
Well, no, it's just really hard to be able to find, I have insurance, so thinking about no insurance, I don't even understand how someone can do, manage, because I'm barely getting by with the treatment that I should be able to have with insurance.
Right. I think that's a very good point. It's as much a problem for...
I think there needs to be something better set in place. Like, look at England. They have, hospitals are open for everyone, and treatment's not based on money or income or this or that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the comments. We'll address some of what you had to say there.
All right, you have a great day.
Thank you.
In
We're
fact,
down to less than 3 minutes here. So.
In fact, if you've got appendicitis as an American in England, they just take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
They take care of you more than we take care of you.
Even if you're not a citizen, you mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, they just take care of people.
I can't picture that happening here.
No. And I've been studying, looking at, talking about healthcare for 4 years now. And I can honestly say that every week or two I learn something about our healthcare system that makes me understand that it's way more broken and corrupt than I even imagined 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens again and again and again, and I guess it surprises me that I'm surprised.
Yeah. I guess you're just an optimist.
Yeah. Never been accused of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this last caller's point is well taken, is that this is a problem for people who are insured, even more so than the people who are uninsured, because they're paying for a product that they think is going to protect them, and it doesn't.
That's a good point. And then also, I was at a single payer one the other day, and they were talking, a couple people got up and talked about how, they pay this for years, and then all of a sudden they go to use it, and they get denied for whatever reason. And what happens to all that money they've been putting in for all them years? I mean, that's just not fair. And it's not a fair system. It's fair if you're part of the elite that happens to belong to the insurance companies or be on their board of directors or whatever. But we'll get down to about a minute and a half. Have any more plans for any more future, or anything you want to sum up with?
Here in Portland?
Well, we're going to have an event in Portland. Matt has held Doctor's presentation, kind of like what we did on the road, on November 15th. The venue's not been established definitively yet.
Well, I'll make sure to get the word out as the information comes in as well.
In the evening.
In the evening, First Unitarian Church or somewhere here
Maybe.
in town, and you'll play some of the video, I suppose, and because that video was just dynamite. All them people from all across the country, and you'll have the final one done by then, probably.
Oh, I don't think so.
still
We're working on a kind of
was-
a major video that tells the story and brings all the elements together.
Oh,
And
that takes some time.
It's going to be a few months.
All right.
It's a lot of work.
Well, we're down to just about half a minute here, so I appreciate you folks coming up from Corvallis and letting us all know what your experience was. We could talk about that trip, and there's probably a lot of video that will be shown later on when you get this thing finished. But thank the callers. It was good calls, even the fellow from Canada. We need to know what other people's experiences are. And I want to thank the crew. They're behind the cameras in the control room, making us look good out here. So. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Don't forget. No, we didn't get a chance to play Eric, but go to my website, philosopherseed.org, and hit the audio button, and I'll have that audio up real soon. And it's already on there. I just have to make the connections, and I'm still learning how to do all that. We're down to 30 seconds. I want to thank the caller. I want to thank the crew. The crew always does a great job. We're down to just a little bit of the show. In memory of Bob Hedlund. He was the audio guy for a long time, was also the power behind, one of the powers behind the Independent Producers Organization, and we'll never forget him. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.